There's something about this episode that just feels a little off. And I just can't put my finger on it. Where's that guy? If you're wondering where that Geats review is for this week, it was last week. Now then, let's get to the action! Now, this show seems to be going into its own 5-episode arcs, with the first one focusing on the revelations behind Gira, and this next one focusing on the individual kings seeing Gira beyond his abilities and to see his actual worth. They managed to dump in some more lore in a relatively quick pace, if I do say so myself. Oh, also, why am I in burning form? Well, on Friday's Toku Rewind, I theorized that it's possible that the incoming sixth would have been asleep this entire time, and the ending of this episode just proved that right. So with that, let's get to it. We're given a bit of a backstory regarding the kings and King-Ohger. The past kings, though having different paths and ideals, were able to unify under a common goal, being able to pull off a miracle and summoning the true potential of the King-Ohger. Now back to Gira in a familiar spot of being captured. This time, he's at Bugnarok HQ, getting the slap around from Deathnarok, who wants him to summon the greater shoe gods and on top of that, see the world burn. With the retainers being choked out last week, minus one Morphonia, the kings all get peak emotion regarding this and the lack of Himeno having medicine from, being strangled. That's not a thing, Yanma. It's now time for the semi-weekly dick transmission, fueled by Raid. The bug spray, not the game. These cocoons ain't built like the last one. These got some roots. And now, it's the time that they surrender to him so that each country can be saved, one by one, in order of priority. And Yanma, you're last because fuck. Either way, Raculus does give them some real advice, that they should put aside their differences if they're gonna make this work. The thing is, even if they have Gira, King-Ohger can't be 5 places at once. But maybe with the greater shoe gods, but you know what, otherwise, it might just be safe to join King Dick. Faced with the impending doom, the kings each prep for the worst in abandoning their kingdoms. However, their retainers, through the admission of Gira's words last week, come through to each king their own way. Peak emotions! So with that, they get a move on, while Gira gets flung up by Deathnarok, proclaiming himself the king of the planet, but Gira knows that that's just not his right. But knocked down a peg, he joins the others, and we get some pretty good, wait, what happened to Rita's eye?
What? There we go.
Yeah, where's Space Fies back there? Psycho Kaiser? I mean, he just shows up. What? Do you think he's just a soulless husk gathered from Space Fies' leftover water particles, materialized to further my own agenda? He's got his own stuff to handle. Also, quick question. Are you Team Toei Bandai or Team Hasbro? Well, you see, I used to work for Toei in their costume department, coming up with all the new forms for Revice. How'd that go? We don't talk about that. Anyway, as the fighting and transformations come through, Gira gets knocked back, but comes back with the wings of Kuagon for the assist. Oh shit, are the others gonna get like shoe god upgrades too? No? Not this episode. Maybe next time? Well then. They're still doing damage though. Flaming Spin Dash the Boski, dual wielding Maiden Himeno. Now that's a combination I can drink to. throwing Rita and arrow assist thrusting Yanma. This is enough to drive Deathnarak back. But he has the last laugh knowing that they can't beat those cocoons. But that's when the love triangle shows on up. So it's time to... Oh yeah, Gira's not a king, but has that stopped him before? Nope. So chop chop. Roll call. The mech. With Legend King-Ohger and all kings together, this amplifies its power to travel at near light speeds, gathering each Bugnarok from each nation into a single location for the finishing strike. The afterimage still present in each country, but after all is said and done, Raculus takes the credit for everything, and no one bothers to dispute it. But if you thought that was the end, Deathnarak has something more in store. So it's time for the narrator to wake up from his nap. You know, this isn't much of a form change, but I do gotta talk about it. And that's Kawagata Ohger's winged form. So with that, let's kinda sorta talk forms. The first time I saw this, I thought he had lost that side cape. But of course, that's incorrect. I actually do wish that he kinda lost it and gained the wings instead, as it would put this into a bigger balance. Though it was CG, I do hope we get more of this form in the future, and maybe we could make it more practical add-on later on. It was indeed a surprise, which makes me wonder if he gained this through his bond with his shoe god, and if the others will get anything else similar. If not, different parts depending on the need, since in the intro, Gira doesn't gain the wings, but the mandibles on the arm. So what must have been a stylistic choice in the intro seems to be implemented into the show now. Rating time! This show really knows how to wrap up an arc, and they are doing things in a very storied fashion. They had a proper story structure from beginning, middle, and end, all coming in strong, with the 2 episodes in between each section giving us a proper world structure in the happenings, with the first 5 episodes focusing on Gira's origins and world building, and the second arc focusing on rebuilding the legend and Gira showing his worth. This is continuing the recent Sentai trend of completely dismantling franchise norms, with this episode having Deathnarak completely throw down with each king and this time lose. It was a moment indeed, and because of that, this episode is getting the Sononi S Plus Maximum Thirst Retainers Doing Things edition. It's great to see that the payoff to Gira's interactions with the 4 retainers last week came into play beautifully this week, with each having their heartfelt interactions with their kings. Morphonia talking through Mofun to Rita after getting through all them locks. Shiokata legit having to mellow Yanma out in an emotional exchange of what each is supposed to do for each other. Sebastian pointing out Himeno's weakness of not wanting to lose anyone anymore. And then Kurada feeding into the Boski's do anything no matter how sneaky for the sake of tofu approach. The last episode helped to give us, as an audience, time with these characters so that this moment in this episode could actually be felt and not come out of nowhere. That's good. King-Ohger is unconventional, similar to Dom Brothers in the way that the team hasn't really formed up through to this point. They do fight, but it's never really felt together. This episode explains that it was similar with the kings of old, though they had to find common purpose to be able to look past their own differences and actually take things to where they needed to be. And that came across beautifully with the combination attacks showcased off here. King-Ohger, for the most part, was really solely controlled by Gira, so when the others took over, there would be a little bit of a clash. Now in episode 5, we got a glimmer of the 5 fully synergizing to unlock the true capabilities of the King-Ohger, but here we see it more so. So I felt that they might have a future challenge that might threaten their synergy and thus would be throwing King-Ohger off balance. Deathnarak is an interesting character these last couple of episodes. Outside of just throwing hands with everyone immediately, his plans are actually well executed to his current intel. But there's something more. With Gira captured, Kamijin insists that they just kill Gira, but Deathnarak actually actively avoids doing so, even looking into his eyes And, as I've said before, it's kind of weird that he's already on a first name basis with him. It makes me think that there is a connection between these two that Gira just isn't aware of, since he even wanted to show him how this new world would be. There's gotta be something here. Since Defnerak himself would be considered a king, did his line coexist with humans until they usurped his kind and drove them underground? The 2,000 years of laying underground might have made the events of the past just continue to ferment that hatred. But Defnerak, seeing something in Gira, might point that might go in a different direction now. With the preview, we can infer that Jeremy, the oncoming ranger, has been kept asleep by the Bugnarak, but the line stating that the Bugnarak might not be enemies makes me wonder if the turn for this arc will actually be humanizing them in some way and finding out that since the victors write history, that the legends actually conceal the truth. It's possible that we may have a uniting between the world and the underworld for a greater threat that remains to be hidden. It might be the reason why Defnerak even wants the King-Ohger for the purposes of fighting off this bigger threat, which would be something that you would see in your typical JRPG, so I'm all in for that. It just makes me wonder if Raculus himself is aware of this and is just trying to keep the secret, and overall will be the one standing in the way of proper progress being made between the kings and the Bugnarak going forward. Though, Kamajin also seems to be stirring the pot on this, making things much more difficult as well for things to also reach that point. Either way, we are actually getting our 6th member of the team about a month earlier than we got Jiro and Dom Brothers. And I'm starting to think that it might be because we're gonna get an additional member down the line as well. And there's potential that it might even be Defnerak himself. Makes you wonder. So, what did you think about this week's King-Ohger? The retainers having their time to shine, the King-Ohger also shining, and Defnerak really coming out the woodwork so early on. Anyway, that's it for me. I gotta start prepping for that Dom Bros Director's Cut talk. Outside of that, I'll see you all next week. Bye.